Back in my 20s, I worked as an overnight lead at a local retail store. It wasn't your typical big chain grocery store. It had only about 8 or 9 locations. Most nights, I had an overnight stalker to assist, but occasionally, I found myself alone for the entire shift. Given the store's size, it wasn't a high-pressure working environment. Sometimes I deliberately slowed down my pace to ensure I wouldn't run out of tasks. On this particular night, I was flying solo, engaged in my routine of stocking shelves. My mind wandered, contemplating random thoughts, when a knock at the front entrance jolted me. Initially, I almost didn't register the sound due to my spaced-out state, but once I did, confusion set in. The knocking echoed through the store, and as I approached the entrance, I spotted a hooded man outside. "We're closed. Won't be open until 8 a.m., I conveyed through the glass, pointing to the closed sign on the door. The man gazed at me, but remained silent. I reiterated that we were closed, yet he continued to stare for a few more seconds before walking away. I observed his departure, but it seemed like he hadn't parked anywhere nearby. It struck me as odd, but I brushed it off, assuming he was simply at the wrong place. By 2 a.m., I had covered half of the aisles and was ready for my lunch break. I left the boxes as they were and headed to the break room at the opposite end of the building. After about half an hour, I returned to work, strolling through the store and reaching the aisle where I had left off. As I glanced up, a man walked past the other end, seemingly oblivious to my presence. A sudden rush of fear enveloped me. Listening intently, I heard the man's footsteps heading toward the side of the building I had just come from. Instinctively, I hid behind the shelves, and soon after, I heard him rushing out of the break room. The footsteps transformed into a sprint, growing louder as they approached. Panicked, I ran for the other end of the aisle, glancing back to see the man turning and running towards me. Reaching the front door, I fumbled with my keys, unlocking it with shaky hands. Just as I stepped out, a bright flash caught my eye, accompanied by a deafening pop, a gunshot. The sound reverberated, and I sprinted around the building, making it to my car. Huddled in the back seat, I dialed 911. Fortunately, the man didn't pursue me outside. He had vanished by the time the police arrived. Upon investigation, the police discovered the back door busted open, accompanied by heavy tools nearby. The most chilling revelation was the gunshot hole near the front doors. The man's motive remained unknown, with law enforcement speculating it might be a result of a mental breakdown or psychotic episode. He seemingly had no logical reason to target me, except for the fact that I was alone. Following that harrowing incident, I no longer worked at the store. However, the years that followed were marked by heightened vigilance every single night, haunted by the memory of that unsettling encounter. I've always been a creature of the night, so when the opportunity arose to take on the late-night janitorial duties at Greenwood High, I welcomed the solitude. The school, nestled on the outskirts of town, had a history shrouded in whispers, but I needed the job, and the night shift seemed like a small price to pay for financial stability. The first time I stepped into the echoing halls after hours, I felt an eerie chill crawl down my spine. The hum of the fluorescent lights above, flickering sporadically, cast long shadows that seemed to dance in the corners of my vision. As the sole custodian navigating the labyrinth of classrooms and deserted corridors, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Greenwood High had seen generations of students pass through its doors, leaving behind echoes of laughter, dreams, and something more sinister, unspoken tales that clung to the walls like a persistent fog. My coworkers, a distant memory during the day, became invisible companions in the night, their absence amplifying the unsettling solitude. The routine was mundane, yet each night, as I pushed the squeaky janitorial cart through the dimly lit hallways, I couldn't ignore the subtle creaks and groans of the aging building. It was as if the school itself whispered secrets to me, secrets it had held onto for far too long. One particular Wednesday, the air felt different. A thick fog enveloped the exterior, and the moon cast an ethereal glow over the school grounds. As I stepped into the building, an oppressive weight settled on my shoulders. The usual routine of mopping and disinfecting became a haunting ballet, with every echo magnified into a symphony of unnerving sounds. The classrooms, eerily quiet during the day, now seemed to harbor unseen occupants. The chalkboards, remnants of the day's lessons, reflected the dim light with an otherworldly luminescence. My footsteps echoed through the empty halls, punctuated by the occasional rattle of a loose window pane or the distant tapping of unseen fingers on forgotten keyboards. Around midnight, as I approached the gymnasium, a peculiar sensation crawled up my spine. The heavy double doors, usually secured with a rusty padlock, stood slightly ajar. I hesitated, glancing around the deserted corridor, but the only company I had were the shadows that clung to the walls like specters. Pushing the creaking doors open, the gymnasium revealed itself in the dim glow of emergency exit signs. The air within was thick, laden with a strange energy that made my skin prickle. The basketball hoops cast elongated shadows on the polished floor, resembling skeletal fingers reaching for something unseen. As I made my way to the center of the gym, a distant whisper caught my attention. The words were indistinct, as if carried by the wind, but they sent a shiver down my spine. "Leave." The voice seemed to murmur a plea or a warning I couldn't discern. My heart quickened as I scanned the vast space, searching for the source of the haunting words. The bleachers loomed like silent sentinels, and the trophy cases, filled with relics of the school's past glories, seemed to hold secrets of a darker nature. In the far corner, I noticed a flicker of movement. My eyes strained against the dimness, revealing the outline of a figure, an ethereal silhouette that seemed to dissipate when I blinked. Fear tightened its grip on me as I fumbled for the flashlight in my pocket, illuminating the space. The gymnasium, now bathed in the harsh beam of light, revealed no trace of the mysterious figure. Yet the voice persisted, growing louder and more desperate. "Leave before it's too late." My footsteps, initially hesitant, quickened into a pace bordering on a frantic escape. The gym doors, reluctant to yield, creaked shut behind me, sealing off the eerie whispers within. My heart pounded in my chest as I navigated the labyrinth of hallways, haunted by the unseen presence that lingered in the shadows. The night, once a canvas of solitude, now felt like a conspirator in a spectral plot. As I approached the janitor's closet to stow away my cart, an unearthly chill descended. The door, usually obedient to my touch, resisted as if guarding a forbidden secret. Pushing against the resistance, the door swung open, revealing the darkness within. A cold gust, laden with the scent of decay, wafted out, making me recoil. The contents of the closet, a jumble of mops, brooms, and cleaning supplies, seemed to shift in the shadows, taking on an otherworldly presence. A whisper, more audible than before, emanated from the depths of the closet. "You shouldn't have come here." The flashlight slipped from my trembling hands, its feeble glow flickering as it clattered against the floor. The closet door slammed shut with an otherworldly force, plunging me into complete darkness. The spectral whispers surrounded me, echoing in a cacophony of disembodied voices. In the inky blackness, I fumbled for the door, my hands meeting cold, unyielding surfaces that seemed to mock my attempts at escape. Panic set in as the whispers intensified, converging into an unintelligible chorus that threatened to unravel my sanity. Just as despair threatened to consume me, the door relented, swinging open to reveal the dim glow of the hallway. I stumbled out, gasping for breath as if I had emerged from the depths of a nightmare. The janitorial cart, now an unwelcome companion, stood as a silent witness to the spectral ordeal. With shaky hands, I retrieved the fallen flashlight, its feeble beam casting long shadows that seemed to writhe with a life of their own. The school, once a haven of routine, had become a realm of spectral anomalies, and the normalcy of my nightly duties had given way to an unsettling reality. As I retraced my steps through the now haunted corridors, the whispers accompanied me like phantom footsteps. The spectral presence, once confined to the gymnasium and janitor's closet, had infiltrated every nook and cranny of the school. The walls, adorned with the achievements of generations past, seemed to absorb the unseen sorrow and secrets that clung to them. Approaching the exit, I cast one last glance over my shoulder. The shadows, now animated by unseen forces, seemed to part reluctantly as if mourning the departure of an unwitting intruder into their spectral domain. The heavy double doors, etched with the scars of time, swung open, releasing me from the clutches of the haunted institution. As I stepped into the cool night air, the oppressive weight that had settled on my shoulders lifted. The school, bathed in the ethereal glow of the moon, stood as a silent sentinel, guarding its enigmatic secrets. The whispers, though distant, lingered like a haunting melody, a reminder that some truths are better left undiscovered. The tale of that fateful night, woven with spectral encounters and unseen forces, became etched in the annals of my memory. The experience, more nightmare than reality, marked the culmination of my nocturnal odyssey through the shadowed corridors of Greenwood High, a journey that blurred the lines between the mundane and the supernatural. As dawn broke on the horizon, casting long shadows that retreated with the fading night, I emerged from the spectral embrace of the school. The janitorial cart, now a vessel of silent witness, bore the remnants of a night fraught with otherworldly encounters. The once familiar halls, now tainted with the echoes of unseen whispers, echoed my hurried footsteps as I made my way into the dissipating darkness. Greenwood High, a silent witness to the spectral ballet that unfolded within its walls, resumed its facade of normalcy with the arrival of the sun. The students, oblivious to the supernatural ballet that transpired during the night, would fill the echoing halls once more, unaware of the spectral secrets that clung to the shadows. And so, the tale of the school janitor, entangled with whispers in the shadows and unseen forces that defied explanation, faded into the recesses of memory. The night, once a canvas for routine janitorial duties, had transformed into a realm of spectral anomalies, a journey through the supernatural corridors of a school that harbored secrets best left undisturbed. I'm 34, and here I am dwelling alone in the cavernous expanse of a house that was once intended for a lively family. The remnants of my past life linger in the echoes of a broken marriage and abandoned dreams of a bustling household. Despite the grandeur of my surroundings, I found myself shackled by the chains of a relentless schedule, unable to extricate myself from the clutches of this oversized abode. So I remain ensconced in the eerie solitude that permeates every nook and cranny. As the solitary dweller within these vast walls, I've grown accustomed to the symphony of sounds that reverberates through the empty halls. The air conditioner, a mechanical maestro of sorts, contributes its hollow thuds, each note resonating within the walls and orchestrating a peculiar harmony that permeates the entire house. Initially disconcerting, this peculiar serenade has metamorphosed into a banal backdrop, an auditory companion to my solitary existence. On a particular Thursday night, fatigue clung to my bones as I returned home from the rigors of a long workday. My ritualistic ascent to the upper floors ensued, shedding the trappings of professionalism for the comforts of casual attire. My bed beckoned, and the ambient glow of the television screen illuminated my solitude. My interactions with the expansive dwelling were minimal, confined primarily to the utilitarian confines of the kitchen. As I reclined, attempting to coax my weary eyes into the embrace of sleep, the familiar thud of the air conditioner reverberated through the house. Initially dismissive, my attention pivoted when hunger usurped the pursuit of slumber. The intrusive noise persisted as I ventured into the depths of the house, amplifying in volume and intensity. A disconcerting chill slithered down my spine, and the mundane explanation of a malfunctioning appliance crumbled in the face of a more sinister possibility. Intrigued and uneasy, my curiosity led me to the basement, the clandestine abode of the air conditioning unit. Flicking on the lights, I was greeted by an eerie silence, an unsettling departure from the expected hum of machinery. My quest for answers remained elusive, dangling on the precipice of uncertainty. Returning to the upper realms, contemplating the exploration of other rooms, an unexpected sight arrested my gaze. A shadowy figure nestled beneath the basement stairs. In a crescendo of fear and adrenaline, I sprinted to the safety of my room, sealing myself within its confines, and summoning the guardianship of law enforcement through the urgency of a distress call. As the minutes unfolded in tense anticipation, the intruder below delivered ominous blows, a disconcerting symphony that echoed through the house. The police arrived with a swiftness akin to a crescendo, apprehending the trespasser armed with malevolent intent and a formidable arsenal of burglary tools. A subsequent exploration of the basement revealed a demolished safe, an unwitting victim ensconced in the walls, its contents of value long since pilfered. Haunted by the violation of my sanctuary, I embarked on the task of repairing the breached wall and concealing the remnants of the failed burglary. The safe, now an empty relic, bore the scars of intrusion, a testament to the fragility of security within the confines of one's home. With the scars mended but the wounds of fear still raw, I resolved to seek refuge in a more modest domicile, where the walls would not whisper tales of intrusion and violation in the lonely hours of the night. Fall has always been my favorite time for camping, with the leaves changing colors and the crispness in the air. So, when my closest friend, whom I'll refer to as Emily, invited me to join her on a camping trip for her birthday, I eagerly seized the opportunity. We gathered our gear and set out for a secluded spot in the woods, a location her family had frequented for years. As we embarked on the hike, a pleasant silence enveloped us. It felt as though we were the sole inhabitants of the world, relishing the tranquility. The hike, though relatively short, brought us to the campsite where we efficiently set up everything. With some time to spare, we decided to explore further by heading on a hike, venturing northward off the beaten path. Our aimless exploration led us to a faded trail, previously unnoticed by Emily. Expressing her confusion, we followed this mysterious trail winding through the woods until we stumbled upon an old, dilapidated cabin. It stood small and weather-beaten, with broken windows and a sagging roof. While Emily was eager to explore, I felt a mix of hesitation and curiosity. Upon entering, it was evident that the cabin had been abandoned for years. We combed through, searching for any remnants or clues about its former occupants. But our efforts yielded nothing. As we prepared to leave, my attention was drawn to a peculiar detail, a small door in the corner, unnoticed until then, adorned with an ancient, rusted padlock. Curiosity piqued. Emily and I decided to investigate further. The lock, worn and rusted, presented a challenge that we swiftly overcame with a large rock. As the door creaked open, darkness enveloped us. Emily aimed her flashlight, revealing a staircase leading downward. Despite the eerie atmosphere, we assured ourselves that there was no rational cause for fear. Taking the lead, I descended the steep staircase, leading to a room. The sight that greeted us was both disturbing and peculiar. Several small mattresses scattered on the ground, accompanied by modern-looking furniture. The incongruity of the scene filled us with fear, prompting a hasty retreat upstairs. We pushed the door shut, unsure of the unsettling discovery. Debating whether we stumbled upon a crime scene, the discussion was abruptly halted as Emily shushed me. Footsteps echoed in the distance, approaching the cabin. Strangely, they continued past without stopping. Confusion etched on our faces. We sprinted back to our campsite and then to Emily's home. Concerned about the mysterious visitor, we decided to call the police. The fact that the person didn't halt near the cabin suggested familiarity, raising uncertainties about potential malevolent activities. The police searched the cabin and its surroundings, but found no evidence leading to any significant discoveries. The situation remained an enigma, captivating our town's community as they speculated on various theories regarding the cabin's purpose. In response to the escalating interest, the city authorities opted to dismantle the cabin, discouraging curious visitors. Despite these efforts, the mystery surrounding the cabin endured, shrouded in uncertainty. It became a topic of discussion in our town, with the community pondering the possibilities and theories surrounding the enigmatic structure. The city's decision to demolish it reflected the underlying fear of what might have occurred within those weathered walls, an unsettling feeling that continues to persist. In my childhood, our family had an annual tradition of embarking on extensive camping adventures. Growing up in the vastness of Arizona, where nature seemed scarce, these trips were a breath of fresh air. Our destination for one such excursion, however, wasn't the familiar Arizona terrain, but the lush woods of Washington. These camping trips held a special place in my heart, not only for the chance to revel in the beauty of trees and grass, but also because I got to reunite with my cousins. Despite seeing each other only a few times a year, The bond between us was remarkably strong. Among them, my favorite cousin, whom I'll refer to as Daniel, was more like a brother. We were inseparable, and an incident during one of these camping trips would forge an even stronger connection between us. The events unfolded 18 years ago during a trip that, in hindsight, harbored a sense of danger we were too young to comprehend. 2 days into our camping expedition, most of the family was either at the lake or gathered around the campfire, engrossed in conversation. Daniel, not particularly fond of swimming, and I opted to explore the woods and engage in our version of tag, which we called Bandit. As we played in the dense forest, the thrill of chasing and being chased intensified. It wasn't long before my adrenaline kicked in, urging me to sprint away from Daniel. The game led me to an old, weathered trailer, with Daniel close behind, abandoning the chase as we assumed the trailer was abandoned. Despite contemplating further exploration, an unexplainable hesitation held us back, and we decided to head back. About 10 minutes into our return journey, we encountered a couple pushing a shopping cart filled with an assortment of rusty metal objects. The woman, friendly and welcoming, approached us while the man lingered in the background. She inquired about our names, ages, and whether we were lost. Oddly, she assured us there was no need to be scared and offered to help us find our way home after they dropped off their belongings at their campsite. To sweeten the deal, she suggested we could also join them for some daytime s'mores. Despite our initial hesitation, the woman's friendliness and the daylight hours made the proposal seem less suspicious to our 7-year-old minds. Guided by the belief that bad people only do things at night, we decided to join them, walking together towards their camp. However, discomfort began to creep in as I observed the contents of their shopping cart, random rusty items that appeared to be salvaged trash. Unease intensified each time I glanced at the man, who never smiled and occasionally locked eyes with me in an unsettling manner. The memory of his creepy stare still lingers 18 years later. As the old trailer reappeared in the distance, the woman grabbed our hands, expressing excitement about making s'mores. Suddenly, our names were called out, first Daniel's and then mine. A momentary pause ensued, during which the lady tightened her grip on my hand, seeking the man's opinion on what they should do. His response, now forgotten, led to a swift turn toward the trailer, with the woman briskly guiding us, holding us tighter as we moved faster. Amidst the unfolding scenario, my sister appeared through the trees. Without hesitation, I yelled her name, prompting the woman to release my hand. Daniel and I sprinted towards my sister, who announced our discovery to the rest of the family. Gratitude was expressed to the seemingly helpful couple, who wove an elaborate tale about attempting to locate our parents for a while and praising us as sweet boys. Though my parents extended an invitation for the couple to join us for burgers, they thankfully declined. Despite discussions among my dad and uncle about the eerie demeanor of the man, the true nature of the encounter remained hidden. Daniel and I, feeling a sense of embarrassment and reluctance, vaguely communicated our discomfort to my sister, who failed to grasp the gravity of our unease. It wasn't until we reached an age of understanding the darker aspects of human intentions that Daniel and I revisited the incident in depth. Analyzing the situation, we concluded that the couple, driven by financial desperation, might have had sinister motives, perhaps intending to sell us or worse. For years, I kept this unsettling experience from my parents, adhering to the perception that I needed to be the strong one in the family. The memory of that time left me feeling violated and preyed upon. Daniel, older and burdened by a sense of failure for not protecting me, shared in my silence. We eventually mustered the courage to disclose the incident to our parents a few years ago, harboring a wish that we had done so sooner, perhaps preventing a similar fate for others. In the present day, as a parent myself, I exercise utmost vigilance over my children. I make it a point to convey to them that they can confide in me without fear of judgment, especially my son, emphasizing the importance of open communication about their experiences and concerns. Living a rather ordinary yet somewhat boring life, my routine involved returning home from work around 10:30 p.m. each night. More often than not, My wife would already be peacefully asleep by the time I arrived. Our moments together were mostly confined to Saturdays, given that it was my only day off during the week. Upon returning from work, my typical ritual involved grabbing a late-night snack, watching TV, or engaging in computer games and web browsing. On a particular night, I found myself engrossed in a game with my buddy, now known as Eric. I can't recall the catalyst, but our conversation veered into the mysterious realms of the dark web. Although I had heard about the deep web before, my knowledge was limited. The sinister reputation of the dark web intrigued me, and Eric's tales only fueled my curiosity. He guided me on how to access this clandestine domain, emphasizing the need to download a tool called the Tor browser. After our gaming session, I delved into online research, even resorting to YouTube tutorials on navigating the dark web. While engrossed in my exploration, my wife stirred from sleep, inquired if I was joining her in bed. Taking it as a subtle cue, I abandoned the computer, promising to delve further into my research the next day. True to my word, the subsequent evening, with my wife in a peaceful slumber, I seized the opportunity to explore the mysterious dark web. Fueled by curiosity, I cautiously maneuvered my way into this unknown territory. Remembering Eric's advice to tread carefully and avoid suspicious links, I began my exploration, uncovering an array of bizarre sights. Without delving into exhaustive details, I found myself on a website offering illegal weapons. Clicking what I presumed to be the next page of weapon listings, I was transported to an entirely different website, opening a new tab on my computer. Out of the blue, hostile messages flooded my screen. Threats of finding and harming me, coupled with demands for money, emanated from an anonymous aggressor. Irritated, I engaged in a war of words, dismissing the threats as juvenile attempts at intimidation. The tone escalated, with the tormentor disclosing my address and real name, sending shivers down my spine. Fearing the worst, I was warned against logging off. The assailant vowed repercussions for my family unless I complied. The ominous promise of hacking my computer to plant disturbing images intensified my panic. Demanding $2,000 in Bitcoin, the choice between compliance and resistance became increasingly dire. While reluctant to capitulate, I found myself cornered, unable to exit the dark web or the Tor browser. Somehow, the assailant had hacked my computer. In a desperate move, I unplugged the computer from the wall, halting the intrusion temporarily. Upon restarting, a barrage of graphic and disturbing images plagued my screen, inducing nausea and a severe panic attack. Subsequently, a chat request from the tormentor surfaced, escalating the threats. Debating whether to comply, I grappled with the potential consequences. Despite a strong desire to end the ordeal, an innate distrust prevailed. Unplugging my computer once more, I resolved never to log back in. This traumatic episode unfolded nearly a decade ago, marking the most unsettling experience of my life. Reporting the incident to the authorities yielded no resolution. My computer was seized, never to be returned. Having moved away from that ominous house after almost 2 years, my family and I, fortunately, encountered no physical harm. However, unexplainable occurrences persisted, such as mysterious knocks on doors and bedroom windows during late-night hours. While no intruders were sighted, the lingering uncertainty prevailed. Whether linked to the dark web tormentor or random pranks by mischievous kids, the truth remains elusive to this day. In the past, I used to navigate the dark web quite frequently. One evening, while aimlessly exploring various sites out of sheer boredom, I stumbled upon a chat room where I encountered an individual named Michael. We struck up a conversation that eventually blossomed into an unexpected friendship. For months, we chatted daily about mundane topics, sharing funny videos and memes like any regular friends would. Michael became my internet buddy, and we got along remarkably well. One typical night, engrossed in computer shenanigans, I found myself chatting with Michael and some other friends I had made on the dark web. Then came the moment when Michael sent me a link, a seemingly harmless gesture that would lead to an indelible mark on my memory. With a casual click and an anticipatory smile, I expected to be greeted by a humorous meme video. However, my expectations were shattered when the link directed me to a live video that defied all decency. In the unsettling footage, a woman, completely naked and bound, appeared alongside a masked man, presumably her kidnapper. What unfolded was beyond sinister, and the gravity of the situation is still haunting as I recount it now. The masked man, addressing over 200 viewers on the live stream, asked them to vote on how he should execute the helpless woman. The gruesome options included burning her alive, submerging her in scalding water, dismemberment until bleeding out, or a gunshot. Shockingly, the majority opted for boiling her to death. Overwhelmed with panic, I couldn't tear my eyes away, recording the horrifying scene on my phone, a desperate attempt to document evidence for the police. The internal turmoil was excruciating, and the experience left an indelible mark on my psyche. I wrestled with the conflicting instincts to look away and the morbid curiosity that kept drawing my gaze back to the screen. Unable to endure the brutality any longer, I swiftly exited the dark web, shutting down my computer and even unplugging it from the wall. In a state of distress, I reached out to my best friend in real life, eager to share the nightmarish encounter. However, to my surprise, he advised against involving the police, cautioning me that I might face repercussions just for witnessing the horrific event. Haunted by doubts, I hesitated to contact law enforcement, eventually deciding against it. Looking back, I question whether they could have taken any meaningful action. The uncertainty surrounding Michael's involvement in the disturbing incident further complicated matters, and I chose to distance myself from the dark web entirely. Whether Michael intentionally sent me that link or fell victim to hacking remains unclear. Regardless, the ordeal served as a stark reminder of the dangers lurking online. It highlighted the imperative to exercise extreme caution in every corner of the internet, particularly on the dark web, where anonymity can be a breeding ground for unimaginable horrors. I used to be an ordinary guy, navigating through life without much excitement. My days were routine: work, home, dinner, and a bit of TV before bed. That was until I discovered the dark web, a place I never thought I'd tread. Little did I know, the decision to explore this sinister realm would plunge me into a harrowing nightmare. It all began on a quiet evening, when boredom nudged me towards the mysterious corners of the internet. Intrigued by the whispers of the dark web secrets, I decided to venture into the unknown. Armed with a virtual cloak of anonymity, I downloaded the infamous Tor browser, the gateway to the hidden recesses of the web. As I delved into the murky depths, the initial shock of encountering illegal activities and shady dealings began to fade. It became a twisted fascination, a digital realm where one could stumble upon the unimaginable. Late one night, curiosity led me to a chat room, a gathering place for those who lurked in the shadows. In this dimly lit virtual space, I connected with a user who went by the enigmatic moniker Silent Watcher. The conversations began innocently enough, discussions about obscure topics, sharing bizarre memes, and the occasional dark humor. Silent Watcher seemed like just another online acquaintance, a cipher hiding behind a screen. However, the seemingly harmless exchanges took a chilling turn when Silent Watcher initiated a private chat. A link appeared on my screen, and a sinister invitation lingered in the virtual air. I hesitated but ultimately succumbed to the intrigue, clicking the link with a sense of foreboding. To my horror, the webpage that unfolded revealed a live stream, a woman bound and helpless, her eyes reflecting sheer terror. A masked figure, clad in darkness, stood ominously beside her. The chat section buzzed with disturbing suggestions as viewers proposed unspeakable fates for the captive woman. Fear gripped me, and a moral dilemma paralyzed my actions. Should I alert the authorities and risk exposing my clandestine online activities? Or should I bear witness to this digital atrocity, fearing the potential consequences of intervention? As the majority voted for the most gruesome demise, the masked figure, devoid of any humanity, carried out the heinous act. The woman's agonizing screams echoed through my headphones, leaving an indelible mark on my soul. The screen displayed an unspeakable horror, forcing me to confront the malevolent underbelly of the digital world. Overwhelmed by guilt and helplessness, I made a hasty retreat from the dark web. I shut down my computer, severed the connection, and tried to erase the haunting images etched into my mind. Sleep became elusive as the echoes of that fateful live stream reverberated in my nightmares. Days turned into nights, and the weight of the dark secret burdened my conscience. The lines between reality and the virtual realm blurred, leaving me in a perpetual state of anxiety. I grappled with the decision to share my chilling experience with anyone who might understand. Eventually, unable to contain the torment within, I confided in my closest friend, Jake. As I recounted the events, a mixture of disbelief and horror clouded Jake's face. His advice, however, sent shivers down my spine. "Stay silent," he urged, cautioning against involving the authorities. The digital world, he warned, held its own set of perils, and intervention might bring unforeseen consequences. Haunted by the specter of that night, I withdrew from the dark web, vowing never to return. The virtual landscape, once a source of fascination, transformed into a realm of unspeakable horrors. My ordinary life had become intertwined with an extraordinary darkness that refused to release its grip. In the ensuing weeks, a sinister undercurrent permeated my reality. Strange occurrences unfolded, unexplained knocks on my door late at night, glimpses of shadowy figures lurking in the periphery. Paranoia crept into my daily existence, and the line between the tangible and the imagined blurred. The torment escalated as the unseen forces intensified their presence. Sleepless nights turned into days marked by perpetual dread. The walls of my sanity crumbled, and the once ordinary life I had known slipped away. In my quest for the unknown, I had unwittingly opened a Pandora's box of horrors. The dark web, with its promises of anonymity, had ensnared me in a web of malevolence that transcended the digital realm. The shadows cast by that night continued to darken my days, and the whispers of the virtual abyss lingered in the recesses of my consciousness. As I grappled with the aftermath, I questioned the very fabric of reality. Was the darkness that now surrounded me a manifestation of my own guilt? Or had I unknowingly invited something far more sinister into my life? The answers eluded me, leaving me trapped in a nightmarish limbo, forever haunted by the echoes of the dark web. I'm 20 years old, residing in a quiet town named Sedona in Arizona. My social circle is tight-knit, consisting mainly of a handful of friends and my coworkers. I like to keep things simple, and my routine involves browsing Reddit during my free time, where I actively share posts and engage with the community. One night, as boredom set in, I opened Reddit on my browser and noticed a new message. It wasn't uncommon for people to reach out regarding my posts. However, this message was from an unfamiliar account, now deleted. The mysterious sender instructed me to check my email spam folder. Intrigued, I replied, asking about their identity. Simultaneously, I accessed my Gmail spam folder, finding an email with an alarming subject. "I know who you are." The email contained a paragraph laden with personal information, my full name, Reddit password, and home address, accompanied by threats. Fear gripped me as the anonymous sender demanded a one-time payment of $5,000 in Bitcoin. Helpless, I experienced a sense of impending doom. My immediate response was to cover my webcam with tape, fortifying my sense of security. Returning to Reddit, I found no response from the mysterious user. Attempting to report the account seemed futile, and desperation prompted me to reply to the threatening email. I demanded answers. Who are you? How did you get my information? Is this a prank? Within minutes, a chilling response arrived, affirming that this was no prank. The sender claimed possession of all my information and insisted compliance with their demands to ensure my safety. The demand, however, was beyond my means, and I refused to succumb to their extortion. Desperate for answers, I contacted friends, hoping for a confession. Their denial heightened my anxiety. Threatening police involvement, I discerned that none of my friends were behind the sinister plot. I speculated about workplace conflicts but found no viable suspects. Attributing the breach to a compromised password, I considered malware or hacking as the source of my vulnerability. The dilemma persisted. Should I pay the ransom? My meager earnings ruled out such an option. Distressed, I reluctantly went to sleep, leaving my laptop untouched the next day. That evening, curiosity and nerves led me back to my laptop. Upon logging in, everything seemed normal. The mysterious user had vanished from Reddit. Intrigued, I visited a subreddit discussing computer hacks and scams, sharing my unsettling encounter. A subtle change in the taskbar caught my attention. It darkened. Minimizing windows, I discovered a new desktop wallpaper, an eerie image of my bedroom window. Panic set in as I recognized the white frame of the outside windowsill and a flash capturing me asleep in bed. A pop-up window followed, accompanied by the ominous Windows error sound. The message inside read "Pay" with a winking face. Swiftly, I closed my laptop and powered it off. Pulling down my blinds, I called my parents, and my dad rushed over to help pack valuables into his truck. In a moment of paternal fury, my dad bellowed threats into the night sky, attempting to scare off the faceless adversary. Terrified yet too consumed by worry to be embarrassed, I sought refuge at my parents' home for weeks, using my mom's computer when necessary. Taking precautions, I blocked the email address that initiated this nightmare. Returning to my apartment days ago, fear still lingers. The dread of a knock on my window or another threatening email persists. While hesitant to involve the police, I hope this torment is merely a bluff, praying for a resolution and an end to the terrifying game. I'm a 23-year-old woman who has faced her fair share of challenges, especially in dealing with online harassment and stalkers. Unfortunately, the ease with which social media can be misused has made such encounters increasingly common. One particular incident left a lasting impact on me. It all began with a suspicious email, a cautionary tale of why one should think twice before clicking on unknown links. The email claimed that I was being sued by a random company and urged me to click a link for more details. Ignoring my better judgment, I clicked, only to have my computer start acting glitchy and unresponsive. Despite numerous attempts at restarting, the issues persisted, lagging, slowing down, and playing random sound effects. Certain that my computer had a virus, I couldn't fathom the extent of the threat. The next day, friends bombarded me with messages about a peculiar Instagram post. Anxious, I logged in, only to discover I was logged out of my account. Someone was hacking me, and the situation quickly escalated. Minutes later, my Snapchat notifications exploded, all from a new, random account that had added me. The mysterious account urged me to make a Snapchat call. Anxiously complying, I was met with the unsettling image of a young guy in his 30s. A creepy smile etched on his face. His elongated hello and unsettling conversation revealed his intentions. He claimed to see me every day, found me attractive, and believed this was the only way to get my attention. In a bizarre turn of events, he offered to return my Instagram account if I agreed to be his digital girlfriend. Feeling cornered, I reluctantly accepted, desperate to regain control of my digital life. After receiving the password to my Instagram account, I promptly set my profile to private and posted a story clarifying that the previous content was not from me, but a result of hacking. Curiosity got the better of me, and I pressed John for more information about himself and what he knew about me. He revealed only his name, John, with a smirk on his face, suggesting there was more he could disclose but chose not to. Playing along, I managed to end the call by promising to Snapchat him the next day. Seeking advice from friends, they unanimously recommended activating two-factor verification, deactivating my account, and blocking him. Despite following these precautions, he didn't take it well. An hour later, a new Snapchat user bombarded me with threatening messages, claiming he knew my address and criticizing my decision to block him. The severity of the situation prompted me to involve my parents, and my dad promptly called the police. As we sat in the kitchen, awaiting police intervention, another Snapchat from the guy arrived. A video of him sitting in his car in front of our house, accompanied by the caption, "Don't block me again." Enraged, my dad attempted to confront him, but the car had vanished by the time he reached outside. Regrettably, the police seemed clueless about how to handle the situation, highlighting the challenges they face in dealing with online harassment. Nevertheless, I retaliated by sending a Snapchat of the police car back to the guy, threatening legal consequences if he persisted. The strategy worked, as he immediately blocked me. Though my story concluded on a somewhat positive note, the ordeal underscored the terrifying ease with which individuals can obtain personal information online. Back when I was 16, a friend introduced me to this hidden part of the internet called Dream Market. He used it to buy stuff like weed. He even had what he called a trusted dealer, whose details he shared with me to make a purchase. I don't support such activities. I was just young and naive, thinking that getting Adderall could help me with my senior projects. After that initial purchase, I couldn't resist the temptation to explore Dream Market further. I discovered a range of items, from counterfeit bills to real guns. It piqued my curiosity about the deep web. On Dream Market, I stumbled upon a link that led to what seemed to be a drug chat room. Many people were advertising the drugs they were selling, complete with their rates. It caught my interest. In the chat, people shared random .onion links. I clicked on one that took me to a black page titled Home Base in large text. Below that were various other links. I clicked on several, but most didn't load, probably dead links. One, however, led to another chat room without a title. 3 random-looking usernames were signed in. Without any specific purpose, I joined the conversation. The chat history showed previous conversations in various languages. A guy still in the chat greeted me with a yo before I said anything. I responded, and he asked what I was looking for. I replied with a casual, "I don't know, lol." He inquired about how I found the link, and I told him it was from a site called Homebase. Curious about the deep web, I asked if he had any interesting links. His response was a simple lol, followed by a link. Clicking on the link, the page took a while to load. First, a black background loaded, followed by a text box near the bottom. The last thing to appear was a video. Initially, I thought it was a pausable video, but it turned out to be some kind of live streaming video. The black and white footage showed a dark room with mannequin-like figures seated in wooden chairs. The grainy effect added an eerie touch to the scene, making it feel surreal and unsettling. Unable to discern whether it was live or not, the video took a terrifying turn. One of the seemingly mannequin figures in the chair suddenly jumped up, sprinting towards the camera, accompanied by a loud, staticky screaming sound. The porcelain mask on the person's face filled the screen, leaving only darkness. Confused and disturbed, I returned to the chat, asking the guy what on earth I had just witnessed. His response was a cryptic, "Just keep watching lol," after which he left the chat. Going back to the video, the live stream window was gone, replaced by a blank screen with only the text box at the bottom. Strangely, I couldn't type anything, and my Tor browser window suddenly closed without any input from me. Then a deep, raspy voice emanated from my speakers, attempting to disguise itself. The voice knew my first name and claimed to have all my files. Suddenly, the webcam window popped up, displaying my face on the screen. Panicking, I shut down my laptop and headed to the Geek Squad at Best Buy, where I purchased the computer. The guy at Geek Squad suspected that the intruder obtained basic info from my computer, like my account name. He suggested a factory reset, which we performed together. Fortunately, I didn't have anything crucial to lose, as the computer was relatively new. In the end, I learned a valuable lesson. If you ever venture into the deep web, use a VPN, even for seemingly safe websites. Back in high school, my older brother and I worked at a tiny restaurant located in an outlet shopping center. We both took on various roles, not just waiting tables, but also doing dishes, deliveries, and whatever odd jobs were needed. After a year, my brother graduated and opted for college, so he left the job. However, I continued working there until a few months before I eventually left. One Friday night, I was scheduled for a later shift, closing alongside the manager. Usually, I didn't stay past 8 or 9 due to school, but this night was an exception. At 10:30, we received a delivery call, and by 11 o'clock, I found myself driving to the given address. The receipt stated it was just 8 minutes away, but things took an unexpected turn. A call from my manager informed me that the customer had provided the wrong address. I pulled over to note the new location, and as I entered it into the GPS, a feeling of unease settled in. The address was 25 minutes away in the opposite direction. If they had given this address initially, the order wouldn't have been accepted. Considered going back to the restaurant and informing my manager, but I was already en route, and the order was made. I continued driving, noticing the roads becoming increasingly empty. In the outskirts of town, Where buildings gave way to grassy fields and trees, I reached the provided address. The row of houses was barely visible in the dark, with only a few porch lights breaking the silence. These were not the nicest houses, all single-story box-style homes. I delivered the food to the specified house, feeling an eerie sense as I approached. No signs of anyone home. I set the bag down, ready to leave, but then I saw a man standing behind my car, leaned over as if looking inside. He heard me, looked up, and my uneasy feeling intensified. He didn't respond when I asked if he needed something. The eerie sense grew, and as he stepped back, I noticed figures hurrying towards my car from the woods. Sensing danger, I rushed inside, and the man started yelling. I looked outside and saw him facing the woods, screaming. 3 figures emerged, approaching my car. It felt like a setup, and I knew I had to leave immediately. I reversed out, narrowly avoiding the man trying to block me, and sped away. I called the cops, but the investigation yielded little. The house I was supposed to deliver to was vacant, not technically abandoned, but left to decay for the past decade. The person who placed the order was unknown, and the initial address seemed insignificant. The group's intentions and identity remained unresolved, leaving me with lingering questions that may haunt me for a lifetime. If things had played out differently, I might not be here to tell the tale. Before I left my hometown, I worked the 3rd shift at a place called Waffle House. I chose this shift because it offered the best hourly pay and decent tips, considering we were the only 24/7 diner in the entire town. It took me about a year to save up enough money to rent a place in the city and escape the middle of nowhere. During that time, I witnessed a lot of things that still haunt me. Most of our customers were truckers and random travelers passing through the town on the interstate during the late hours. The town was merely a stopover point, not a destination. The so-called locals were mainly farmers, ranchers, and folks like me who worked in the fast food and hotel chains around the interstate exit. However, the most distinctive residents were the vagrants, hitchhikers, tweakers, and destitute opportunists stranded with us. They could be stuck there for days or even years, panhandling for whatever they could get until catching a lucky ride elsewhere. Dealing with these individuals became the most stressful part of my job. Initially, I tried to be empathetic, recognizing their humanity. However, my perspective gradually shifted, aligning more with my longtime coworker, Carl, the cook who had seen it all in his 15 years there. The only thing separating him from them was his steady position at the grill. While no one ever got a chair thrown at them, Carl was known to toss turners and utensils at anyone who got on his bad side. One unforgettable night, things took a turn for the worse. It had been unusually slow that night, around 4 o'clock in the morning, when a guy walked in. Even I could sense something was off about him. He wore soiled clothes, a torn-up jacket covered in dust, and was in a state of panic. Without saying a word, he ran past us, clutching his right arm, and locked himself in the bathroom. Carl and I exchanged eye rolls, anticipating another round of dealing with a troubled individual. However, this time felt different. After a brief conversation, we realized he had been in the diner just 2 hours ago, desperately asking customers for rides until we had to kick him out for causing a disturbance. It seemed he hadn't had any luck getting a ride, and something else had happened to him. Concerned for his well-being, I ran the check for the only customer in the store, got them on their way, and approached the bathroom. I knocked loudly, asking if everything was okay. The distraught voice on the other side claimed he was really hurt and needed a ride. Alarm bells went off in my head. Fumbling with the keys, I told him I was about to open the door, but he insisted I come in. When I did, the bathroom was empty, spotlessly clean, as if no one had been there at all. Baffled, Carl and I interrogated each other, unable to comprehend the situation. Suddenly, we heard a crash from the back room, the walk-in freezer. We rushed there to find the man tearing things up and pressing a handful of meat to his injured arm. He had a grotesque injury. His wrist was snapped clean off, his hand dangling by a thread of skin. In shock, I called 911, but as soon as the idea struck, the man started to move. He limped across the window, and as we saw him through the glass, we noticed his battered face, bloodied and broken. Carl and I, paralyzed, watched him reach the corner of the window before disappearing. We went to investigate the backroom crash, only to find the back door still locked. Nothing was making sense, but we gave up trying to decipher it. When we left the nightmarish shift and stepped into the world, we saw police and paramedics on the freeway outside of town. It turned out a man had been killed in a hit and run at the off-ramp, barely 1,000 feet from Waffle House. His body, mangled and undiscovered until daylight, had been cleaned up by the afternoon, leaving the spot cleaner than ever. On a cold December night, I arrived at the gas station where I worked the overnight shift from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. Having been at this job for several months, I wasn't particularly fond of it. However, finding alternative employment proved challenging, and considering some aspects of my life, night shifts suited my personal schedule the best. Despite my weariness every night, I struggled through each shift. Pulling into the parking lot, I noticed only one other car beside the building, belonging to my coworker. After relieving him of his shift, it was just me for the rest of the night. The manager had left a task list on the desk, but it didn't seem overly demanding. My estimation was that it would take no more than an hour to complete all the assigned tasks. I procrastinated a bit, delaying the inevitable to prevent myself from falling asleep as fatigue set in. Around midnight, a car pulled into the station. Glancing out the window, I observed an old SUV parked by one of the pumps. Given the snowy weather, most people weren't out and about, making occasional customers a normal occurrence. Returning to my phone and scrolling through videos, I lost track of time until I looked up and saw the SUV still parked outside, its headlights off, doors closed, seemingly waiting for gas. Concerned, I peered outside, checking both sides of the building, but no one was in sight. Given the freezing temperatures, I grew nervous about the individual in the car. I paid closer attention, hoping to spot any movement or see someone return to the vehicle. However, nothing happened. It was as if the car had been abandoned next to the pump. After a moment's contemplation, I decided to put on my jacket and investigate. My suspicions were confirmed. It was too cold for anyone to be in the car with the engine off, and no one was visible outside. I approached the vehicle, looking through the windows, and called out, "Hello, anyone in there? Just checking to see if you're okay." However, from my vantage point, it seemed empty. Though not entirely certain, I was pretty sure no one was inside. Perplexed, I backed away and noticed shoe prints in the snow leading towards the side of the building, not the front. Inspecting the footprints, I realized they appeared to originate from the car. Feeling the chill, I decided to warm up inside before further investigation. Back at the counter, I turned on a small heater and warmed my hands. After only 30 seconds to a minute, a thump echoed through the building from behind me. Startled, I spun around, but there was nothing in sight. Walking around the counter, I noticed puddles of melted snow by the back room's entrance. Feeling a chill run down my spine, I approached the supply room. Turning the corner, I could discern the outline of a tall figure with broad shoulders and a large, scruffy beard, staring right at me from the dark. My heart paused for a moment, and after the initial shock, my instinct was to retreat to the counter. Perhaps shock had paralyzed me. Staring at the doorway for an uncertain period, I quietly picked up the store phone and whispered for police assistance. The next 10 minutes felt like an eternity as I waited in fear. No sounds emanated from the supply room during this time, intensifying my anxiety. When 2 police officers finally arrived, I directed them to the man's location. They searched the room while I stayed by the front, but to my surprise, they emerged without anyone else. The man had vanished. Watery shoe prints surrounded the back door, leading to fresh tracks in the snow that extended into the dark, empty field for miles. Despite subsequent searches, which were challenging due to the vast field and the cold, windy night, no trace of the man was found. The SUV was taken in for further investigation, but curiously, there was no history of ownership. The mystery of who the man was, his purpose, and his current whereabouts remained unsolved, leaving us with more questions than answers. In my early 20s, I found myself employed at a clothing store called Denim Haven. A year and a half of my life unfolded within its walls, spanning the years 2018 and 2019. This peculiar incident occurred one evening as I worked until 9 o'clock p.m. The initial hustle and bustle of the store dwindled, leaving me with little to occupy my time during the final hours of my shift. Seated behind the service desk, I observed a man who had been roaming the store for a while. Tall and slender, he sported a hat, catching my attention from a distance. Although he never ventured too close, I noticed him in various aisles throughout the night. He appeared again about an hour later, empty-handed and without a shopping cart. A lone wanderer, he seemed unaccompanied, prompting my curiosity about his prolonged presence. As closing time approached, the store announcements signaled the impending closure, urging customers to conclude their shopping. In the last 5 minutes, I spotted the man once more, still without any items in hand. At 9 o'clock, I could finally clock out and leave. Unlike some colleagues who stayed behind for cleaning and organizing, my responsibilities ended with my punch-out. Eager to exit, I walked out just after 9 p.m. Denham Haven nestled within a large shopping area, flanked by stores on either side. A vast parking lot stretched in front of them, nearly deserted by closing time. My car, parked a distance away, beckoned me. As I approached, I noticed the man from earlier walking along a curb with a strip of grass, separating our parking lot from the adjacent business. Perplexed but indifferent, my sole focus was reaching my car. While on my way, I heard the man suddenly shout something. Glancing over, I saw him waving in my direction. Offering a friendly wave in return, I continued toward my car. Ignoring the oddity, I couldn't shake a bad feeling. The man, roughly 100 feet away, was now jogging toward me. Not alarmed, yet suspicious, I quickened my pace, reaching my car just as he closed in. Locking my doors for precaution, I observed the man, wearing a friendly smile tinged with bizarre behavior. Rolling down my window slightly, he greeted me and inquired about my hasty departure. Claiming fatigue from a long workday, I dismissed his probing. Undeterred, he asked for a ride home, a request I promptly declined, suggesting a nearby bus stop instead. Unyielding, he then proposed a ride to a convenience store, met once again with my refusal. Reluctantly, he accepted. Retreating from my vehicle, I drove home, grateful that in all my time at Denham Haven, I never encountered that peculiar man again. To this day, I ponder the reasons behind his strange behavior, thankful I chose not to let him inside my car. For the past 10 years, I've led a peaceful life in a small town in Wyoming. My cozy cabin is nestled among others, scattered a few miles from the town center where you can find various shops. While some folks have farms, I have a vast expanse of grassy land that stretches toward the mountains. Around 10 months ago, on a typical night, I sat outside by the fire pit with my laptop, a routine I followed almost every evening, weather permitting. It was around 8 p.m., and the crackling campfire provided a calming ambience. That night, however, took an unexpected turn. I was engrossed in my laptop when I heard a noise through the fire's crackling. I lifted my head to spot a man on the other side of the flame, about 15 feet away. He seemed like a typical local in his 40s, rugged with a large gray beard. Startled, I stood up, attempting to mask the shakiness in my voice as I asked, "What are you doing here? Where did you come from?" The man stared at me with an unsettling look. It felt as if he was on the verge of doing something dreadful. Then he shifted his gaze past me, focusing on my cabin. Without a word, he began walking toward the front of the cabin. Approaching one of the windows, he peered inside, muttering something under his breath. As he turned away, heading toward the trees, I called out, demanding an explanation. Ignoring my words, he disappeared into the darkness. The situation was absurd. A stranger so close to my house, especially at that hour, wasn't a coincidence. His behavior was peculiar, as if he was searching for something and had no qualms about intruding on my privacy. I extinguished the fire, rushed inside, secured the cabin, and grabbed my sidearm just in case. Though I doubted he would return, uncertainty lingered. Contacting the police wasn't a viable option. In our secluded town, their response time was too slow. I was on my own in this remote setting. Determined to stay vigilant, I stayed up for hours past my usual bedtime, monitoring my surroundings for any signs of the mysterious stranger. It must have been 1 a.m. or even 2 a.m. when exhaustion finally overcame me. I drifted off on the couch. Upon waking, I sensed a constant, unusual sound, wind blowing through the house. Confused and groggy, I sat up and noticed the front door wide open. Alarmed, I rushed to close and lock it. Turning around, I braced myself for the possibility of an intruder. Standing by the door for a minute, I listened intently. The silence was deafening, interrupted only by the creaking of the wood due to the wind outside. Cautiously, I explored each room, checking every corner and opening every door. To my relief, no one was inside. Despite the eerie experience, I stayed up all night. At the break of dawn, I drove into town to report the incident to the police. I shared my belief that the man I had encountered was likely the intruder. The bizarre part was the lack of a clear motive. Some odd items were missing, confirming a break-in, but they held little value. Strangely, the intruder neither harmed me nor left any clues about their intentions. Without understanding why they targeted my cabin, the risk of a potential return loomed uncertainly. It was a Friday evening after classes, and that meant video games, pizza, and chatting with my buddies on the phone. I had just hopped off the school bus, and with my parents still at work, my mom usually getting home after 5 and my dad around 6:30, the house was all mine. No sign of my older brother, but being an adult, he could be anywhere. As soon as I stepped inside, I embraced the joy of changing into comfy clothes with sweatpants and an oversized t-shirt too big for public wear. It was one of the best feelings after a long week of school. Don't get me wrong, I loved seeing my friends, but the comfort of being home was unbeatable. Coming from a strict Catholic school, where the dress code was a bit much, changing out of those clothes was my ritual. My mom would nag if I roamed the house in my school attire, so a quick change was always a relief. I went through my usual routine of a shower, a bit of relaxation, and some snacks while waiting for my friends to come online for our gaming session. Mom unexpectedly got home earlier than usual, mentioning she and Dad were off to a party a few hours away. They left around 7, advising me to be safe and call the neighbors in case of an emergency. A couple of hours later, fatigue hit me harder than anticipated. The grand plan of an all-nighter collapsed. I was way more tired than usual. I lay in bed, texting friends, scrolling through social media, and watching YouTube videos. Suddenly, a car outside caught my attention. Assuming it was my parents returning, I peered through the blinds, but the vehicle was unfamiliar. It parked in the driveway, and as the headlights illuminated my room, I quickly turned away. Panic set. Who on earth could that be? I pondered if my parents had a designated driver, but that seemed unlikely given their modest drinking habits. Peeking through the blinds, the car reversed out of the driveway and sped away down our quiet street. Living in a small subdivision with only a handful of houses, our street had a dead end near a wooded trail. The car disappeared in that direction, leaving me unsettled. About 20 minutes later, I almost forgot about it when I heard a car pull into our driveway again. This time, I recognized the sound of someone yelling inside the house. It took me a moment to grasp what was happening. Someone had broken in. Panic surged as I realized I had to act fast. My only escape plan was the window, but to my dismay, I couldn't get it open. With no time to spare, I slid my dresser in front of the door, hoping it would act as a barricade. The only hiding spot was under the bed, though I felt it was too obvious. The intruder's footsteps approached my room, followed by a forceful knock. He demanded entry, but I remained silent. Frantically, I managed to call the police from beneath the bed. Thankfully, an officer was nearby and arrived within minutes. Those minutes felt like an eternity as the intruder persisted in his attempts to break into my room. The police entered, and the intruder was found standing at my bedroom door. A confrontation ensued, and the officer had to use force, shooting the man. The assailant survived and now awaits trial in jail. I called my parents, who rushed home. We hired the best lawyer to ensure justice is served. Since that incident, I can't stand being home alone. The fear lingers, and it's clear why. Last year, I rented a place in a small, economically struggling old mining town in Virginia. Living alone, one warm spring night, I dozed off in my living room on a comfy recliner. However, my peaceful sleep was abruptly disrupted around 4 a.m. when I heard the unsettling noise of my doorknob turning. Thinking it might be a simple mix-up, I called out, "Hey, wrong place." But the doorknob persisted in its turning, and soon the door shook violently. A mysterious hand began punching the door, and the intruder growled menacingly, making bizarre, horrifying animal-like sounds. Feeling alarmed, I grabbed a knife from the kitchen and promptly dialed the police. As I anxiously waited inside, 2 officers arrived, but the person had vanished. Despite a thorough search, there was no trace of the intruder. The officers advised me to call again if anything suspicious happened. The unsettling encounter left me too anxious to go back to sleep, and by the time I resumed my day, it was already 5 in the morning. As the day unfolded, my anxiety lingered, making me worry that the stranger might return. Later that evening, after returning from work, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone had broken in. Despite my anxiety-driven thoughts, everything seemed normal at home. However, as the night progressed around 9:30 or 10 o'clock, strange occurrences began to unfold. While engrossed in a book on my couch, I heard a sudden, loud and peculiar sound, seemingly from inside the house. Though I momentarily forgot about it, soon after, muffled voices reached my ears, leaving me puzzled about their origin. Panicking, I questioned myself, where the hell is that coming from? The unsettling feeling grew stronger, and suddenly, a chilling scream pierced the air, unlike anything I had ever heard before. The adrenaline surged, and a horrifying realization hit me: the crawl space. Fighting the urge to call the police again, I decided to investigate myself. Walking outside and circling the house, I approached the crawl space from the outside. Having never seen it before, I was taken aback to find a guy inside, seemingly asleep or under the influence of drugs. Suppressing my frustration, I silently called the police and stepped out of the crawl space. When they arrived, I pointed out the man, and the officers pulled him out. To my shock, the man had been practically living beneath my house, with a sleeping bag, a lantern, and a stash of food. The revelation horrified me, and sleep became elusive for weeks as I wondered how I hadn't noticed him all this time. I, over the past few years, found myself entwined in the demanding routine of working 2 jobs. The relentless grind saw me leaving my humble abode around 6 in the morning, only to return home at the late hour of 10 at night. Fatigue often dictated my subsequent actions, leading me to embrace the solace of sleep, only to wake and embark upon the same exhausting schedule day in and day out. However, within the mundane rhythm of my life, an unsettling incident unfolded just a couple of months ago. It was a customary night. I returned home, adhering to my routine of unwinding through a warm shower and preparing for a restful night's sleep. Yet, as the water cascaded, an unsettling sensation settled over me. A peculiar noise reminiscent of shuffling echoed just beyond the confines of the bathroom door. Alarmed, I hastily exited the shower, yet my search revealed nothing amiss. Dismissing the disturbance as mere house-settling sounds, I retired to bed, unaware of the nightmarish ordeal awaiting me. Throughout the night, disconcerting noises reverberated through the house, phantom creaks, as if the very foundations groaned in protest. A midnight investigation yielded no tangible source, leaving me to succumb to a wearied sleep, buoyed only by the hope of an undisturbed night. Fatigue clung to me like a shadow the next morning as I grappled with the demands of yet another workday, fueled by the bitter elixir of coffee. Upon returning home, yearning for respite, I headed straight for the comfort of my bed. The ritualistic shower awaited, yet as the water began to cascade, an ominous sound beyond the bathroom door disrupted the semblance of normalcy. This time I was certain the presence lingered, passing by my room with an eerie stealth. A shiver crawled down my spine, and a sense of foreboding enveloped me. Summoning courage, I inspected the house, room by room, but the enigma persisted. A disconcerting feeling lingered, an unsettling dance of unseen forces within the walls or beneath the floorboards. The night pressed on, and despite my apprehensions, I succumbed to the beckoning embrace of sleep just before the midnight hour. Awakening in the inky darkness, an intangible wrongness hung heavy in the air. The stillness of the house amplified an unspoken dread. A faint movement beneath my bedroom door sent shockwaves through me. Heart pounding, I witnessed the subtle play of a shadow, a harbinger of impending doom. Bolstered by adrenaline, I swung the door open, confronting a haunting silhouette at the end of the hallway. Eyes, windows to a malevolent soul, bore into mine with anger and restlessness. Frantically, I barricaded myself within my room, the specter's footsteps echoing a sinister cadence down the stairs. An eternity passed before the departure, leaving me with a chilling resolve to summon the authorities. The police arrived, unveiling traces of the intruder's clandestine occupation of my home. Yet the mystery endured. Speculations abounded, leaving me haunted by the unanswered questions. Why did he linger downstairs after being discovered, and what drove his malevolence? Time trickled by, and the specter did not reappear. The enigma of his identity remained shrouded in darkness, a lingering threat that cast a long shadow over the sanctuary I once called home. Many months ago, my parents transformed our garage into a massive bedroom/hangout space where we all gathered to play video games and throw some epic parties. I was a sprightly 10-year-old, and it was only the second or third time I found myself home alone while my siblings were off doing their own things. I spent the night delving into the joys of our PS2, enjoying the solitude and freedom. As the night rolled on, something peculiar interrupted my gaming bliss, tapping on the window. My parents had revamped the garage, replacing the garage door with a wall window and a regular front door, complete with bolt and doorknob locks. Engrossed in my game, I mistook the rhythmic tapping for in-game sounds, the innocent musings of a child's mind. The tapping, like fingers drumming in a swift pattern of 1, 2, 3, 4, continued for what felt like an eternity, around 5 minutes. It only hit me when the doorknob rattled with a knock. Panicking, I tiptoed to the door to double-check the locks. To my shock, both locks were unlocked. The door had a habit of pretending to be jammed, so I hastily locked both, making sure the intruder knew there was no chance of getting in. A sigh of an older man and a disturbing laugh followed. Then the knocking intensified like a relentless drumbeat on the door. Frozen with fear, I stood there as the knocking turned into banging, the intruder giving it his all. I felt a chill as he moved to one of the windows, covered with a blanket. Though I couldn't see him, his shadow terrified me. Stuck in a state of fear, I didn't know what to do. He returned to the door saying, "Let me in, love. I'm cold and hungry. Don't you want to be nice to your neighbor?" In a panic, I switched off the light, sprinted to my room, and hid in my pitch-black closet under my blankie. I stayed there until my parents returned a few hours later from their anniversary date. Being too young to prioritize safety over bedtime rules, I never shared the terrifying encounter with them. The fear of getting in trouble overshadowed the unsettling experience I had that night.